start. Good afternoon, everyone. And I know there's people from all over the country and the world in here, so welcome. This will be the last panel session of the NIH Virtual Graduate and Professional School Fair. My name is Natasha Lugo Escobar, and I'm the director of the OITE Postbac Enrichment Program in the Office of Intramural Training and Education. And I will be your moderator for the session today on getting into a PhD program in the biosciences. So before we get started, just a few things. Use the Q&A box to post your questions for the panelists. My colleague is here, Dr. Gail Thibault. She will be help managing the questions. Also keep an eye for resources, links to resources in the chat. So today, again, I have the pleasure to be joined by a wonderful group of panelists who are very knowledgeable and have plenty of experience with the graduate school application process. And they are very excited to be here with you to answer all your questions and concerns about this process. So we hope that you take this time and just send us all your questions, right? We'd rather run out of time answering your questions. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna have each of them briefly introduce themselves, and then we'll just gonna start with the Q&A. So I'm gonna start with Steve.
Hi, all. My name is Steve Lee. I use he, him, his pronouns. I'm at Stanford University. I'm an assistant dean of inclusion, diversity, and equity. And I'm glad to talk with many of you.
Thank you. Victoria?
Hi, I'm Victoria Freedman. I'm the Associate Dean for Graduate Programs at the Albert Einstein College of Medicine in New York. And I love working with students who are interested in PhD programs, postbac programs, summer programs, anything in the sciences.
Thank you. Welcome. Davey?
I am Davey Vanvachter. I am a Drosophila biologist, as you can tell from my background, but a large part of my job is being director of a very broad umbrella graduate program at Harvard University. And so it's lots of fun interacting with students in events like this. And I work with many colleagues here as part of a AAMC committee. And so it's wonderful to be here with a group of friends to talk to you.
Awesome. Patricia?
Hi, I'm Patricia Cameron. I'm the Vice Dean of the Graduate School at Augusta University. And I wear many different hats, but I think it all boils down to my passion is to support and advocate for students so that they have a good, not just a good experience in graduate school, but they can really thrive and reach their dreams.
And last but not least, Nicquet.
Hi everyone, I'm Nicquet Blake. I am the Dean of the Graduate Division and Vice Provost of Student Academic Affairs at the University of California in San Francisco. And like my colleagues, we all enjoy interacting with students and looking forward to a great event.
Thank you all for joining us today. Again, they always come and are excited to be here every year that we ask them. So I'm gonna start with the first question. Sort of setting the stage. So a PhD requires a long time commitment, right? So this is something that should be think thoroughly. So what would be your advice for those who are considering PhDs as a potential career, but are not entirely sure or on the fence? What things that they can do now to help them figure out that step before they just jump in and apply without being like fully ready? Anyone can start. David?
I think one of the really key ingredients is getting a sufficient amount of time in the laboratory to really understand, watch role models and understand the challenges of full-time research. It can be as exciting, but it can be frustrating, and you need to be ready for those challenges along the way.
Victoria?
Yes, what I was going to say, of course, the research experience will help you make the decision, but also I think it's very helpful to talk to other graduate students and to talk to the heads of the labs that you're in, to just ask, what do you like about it? What is your day like? What are you doing? Why do you think that this is fun? What are the hard parts? Just so that you kind of get a picture of what it's all about.
I'll also jump in. Davey and Victoria said some wonderful advice and suggestions, and I highly recommend them. So the one thing that I often think about is self-assessment. And so as you're trying to figure out where to go, and I probably have lots of forks in the road, I think it's really important to get a really good sense of who you are, where you want to go. Victoria talked about like talking with grad students, which is really helpful because you sort of think about possible paths. And Davey talked about the importance of research, and that's really critical too. So as you think about research experiences that you've had or hope to have, and I think as you think about where you want to go, I think self-assessment and self-awareness is really critical, so that you have a good sense of what you mean by success. And I think we all have different ideas of success. So one simple exercise, which I've recommended to many people, is called the 7 success stories. So you could Google this, just called 7 success stories. So basically what you're doing is thinking for yourself different areas or scenarios where you felt like you've succeeded. And then what you're looking for is patterns. What did you value? How did you determine success? What were the circumstances? Were you with a lot of people? Were you mostly by yourself? Did you make a whole lot of money, or did you solve a really difficult problem? What did you mean by success? So you're looking for themes along that as you do this 7 success stories exercise.
Patricia, I think you raised your hand.
I did. Steve kind of got there at the end what I was going to say, but I would, if you take what everybody has said so far, and then just remember that when you enter the PhD program, you're likely moving into a career, not a job. And so it's a real personalized decision for you, and to find what's the best fit for you and your goals and your lifestyle. So it's good to do a comprehensive self-reflection of everything that you've experienced, and realize that, this is your life. And if it's something that you get up every day and enjoy, you'll never work a day in your life. You'll have an enjoyable life. So I think that's what, putting all that together to find out what is the best lifestyle and what is the best fit for you and what you're looking for.
Thank you for that. And I think that that's where the point that I wanted to get about that self-reflection, because it's better to take a few years just to figure out than just to go in and then realize, oh, this is not what I really wanted to do. So Steve, thank you for that resource and how to think about it. I really like that perspective. So the next question is, what are some of the qualities or the special experiences that graduate programs look for in applicants? And I think beyond also like GPA and research experience, what are some of the other things that you look for in successful applicants?
Yes, I can start there. For me, when I'm looking at an applicant, I really want to see passion. You have to be the Steph Curry for grad school. You have to come to the lab every day wanting to solve a scientific problem. Mm-hmm. And you got to demonstrate that both in your application and in your interviews.
Yeah. One of the things that we always look for is persistence and determination. So what happens if you hit a bump in the road? Did you learn something from that experience? Did you change your direction? Did you pick yourself up and dust yourself off and start again? Science is like that. It's always 3 steps forward and 2.5 steps back. So we want to know that you understand that failure happens and that you can bounce back from it.
And I think one thing that, in addition to those same fundamental characteristics, which I think are really important, one thing that we're very interested in is creativity. I think it's sometimes hard to decide how you want to show that in your application, but the way that you think about the problem that you're working on, the opportunities that you've had to really take steps and make unique kinds of contributions to the work, the way that you talk about and your curiosity about your own work and the work of others. I think these are really important sort of symptoms of a kind of optimism and a passion, as Nicquet said. I think that's really important, and your determination. But it also, we want to see people who are really seekers, that are trying to open up new problems and see things in new ways.
Thank you, Patricia.
Everything everyone said, essentially we're looking for people that have that ability to succeed and do well. We don't bring people into PhD programs to, weed them out if they don't do good. So we are looking for students who want to succeed. And so everything that everybody said is absolutely true. But what I'll add is that curiosity and that love of learning, because when you enter this profession or this career, you're a lifetime learner. It's not that you'll come take the classes and that's it. You will continue to learn and to grow and to add to the body of knowledge. And so that love of learning, that love of discovery that you want to continue for your life, I think is an important factor.
David, yeah.
One thing I should have said is that each one of us brings a unique quality, a unique kind of set of experiences and intellectual take on things and background. And that is so important. The community of science is really international, it's diverse, and it benefits tremendously from different perspectives. And so showing people how you are unique is actually, it's going to help you stand out, be remembered, and make it clear what you bring to the table.
Thank you for all those suggestions. And I think when we talk to the students, one of the things is like they think like what you're looking is for that perfect student, right? And that's exactly what the message that we want to say no about. We want to know how you're going to thrive, like Victoria mentioned about those setbacks, and just how do you come back from it, because science, we know, doesn't work a lot of the times. So thank you for giving that holistic view of what a successful student is, that we're not looking for perfection. So other questions that we get a lot is about research experience, right? It's the quality or quantity. So like, how is there a magic number on research experience? Some students also get a little bit confused about if they take classes that have like research embedded in it, if that counts. So can you speak a little bit about the type of research experiences that you are looking for? David?
I think one thing that we really look for, a lot of students, and this is true of my own exploration, is you try different things to try and find what kinds of systems and labs and experiences you're really interested in. But we also want to have an opportunity to see some depth. And so it's a balance, and everybody's a little different, but we like to see a student be able to really explore a problem and begin to sort of take on a little bit of independence. And there's no perfect formula for that, but if it's just skimming the surface, I think sometimes that doesn't feel deep enough. I don't know if maybe one of my colleagues can be more articulate than I am.
Yeah, Davey, I think that's really difficult to what is deep or whatever. But I think as an undergrad, you're exploring, and that's completely understandable. So we're not expecting you to have like a first author paper by the time you apply. That's just way unreasonable. And so, but something that I think all of us would probably look for is, were you just a pair of hands that just simply just pushed a few buttons on an instrument and you got a printout and said, this is what we got? No, or did you really thoughtfully, did you consider the research question? Did you help drive some of the questioning and look for solutions and troubleshoot and things of that sort? So if you just, and like if you just washed glassware, like I washed glassware plenty of time when I was an undergrad, and that's part of it. That's understandable. But hopefully you thought a little bit more about your research. You did something that was a little bit challenging, that stretched you. We understand that you're not have obviously done another PhD program, right? So you haven't done that depth. But have you thought about these questions? Are you exploring? Do you have that curiosity if people talked about? Are you just basically a pair of hands, or have you thought deeply about the research?
And I think it's important to understand what hypothesis-driven research is about. So when you're looking at the research experiences that you may have, you want to be sure that you're working in a lab where there is a central question, an overarching hypothesis that everyone is working on and trying to solve the puzzle. And you want to be able to articulate that, to talk about that if you are invited for an interview, to be able to write about that in your personal statement.
Right, understanding and knowing how to talk about their science is the important thing. You're not looking for a technician, right? And I remember those days still watching glassware so much. So the other question related to research is, do they have to have kind of very similar or same research field that the programs that they're looking for? Is that a concern when they're applying?
It depends. I think it depends on the school. It depends on the program. And to some degree, it depends on the individual as well, right? Remember, grad school is a training environment, right? You're not going to get your Nobel Prize out of grad school. So if you're being trained, then what we're training you for are the research skills. So the key, again, as my colleagues just pointed out, is making sure that you understand the research that you have participated in. Depth is better than breadth, right? Every time.
Victoria?
So, I wanted to follow up on Dr. Blake's idea that it depends on what you're applying for. So if you are applying, so most of us are in what we call umbrella programs. And that means that the incoming students, we think of them as, blank slates. You can come in, if you were a neuroscience undergraduate major, you can come in and do some laboratory rotations, take some courses, and maybe you'll discover that really what you love doing is biophysics, and that's fine. However, some programs really are much more specific, and they ask you to identify upfront maybe one or two particular areas or disciplines that you might be interested in. And here's the challenge. It turns out that there is no common PhD application. So you have to read the instructions very carefully, and you have to answer the questions that are specific to that graduate program. And that's going to help you decide if that graduate program is right for you.
Patricia, you put
Yes.
your hand up just the same time, so.
All right. I was going to say it's your story to tell as well. And so if you were in one discipline and you're looking, or you've done research in one area and you're applying to another, and you have a really solid story as to why you think this is a good fit for you and how this research experience has led to your interest in something, it's your story to tell. And if you really understand your research and why you're doing and what you're doing it, and you can, like Victoria said, how you can articulate it and tell your story and how you think this relates to this other field, I think it's worth telling your story and why you want to do that.
Can I just add one quick thing? If this is you, then you should hedge your bets. You should go for both umbrella programs and for individual programs, because you don't want to miss out on the opportunity of getting into grad school because you've switched fields and you're applying to a program that may or may not want that specific type of research, right? So hedge your bets.
I think
and then
that's,
if you get accepted to both, you have choices.
There you go.
and when you get it,
Just do it.
when you get a chance to interview in different programs, you'll also learn so much more about what the program is like from the current students, that can help you make up your mind. I would say also that, you know, folks like us who are very involved in graduate education, constantly replying to questions from potential applicants to help clarify maybe that in one umbrella program, you know, computational biology is really growing, and you have a good chance, if you have a computational interest or computational background. In my program, it's changed a lot. So, you know, 10 years ago, we had very few computational people. Now we have dozens and dozens. So things change. And I think if you want to know, it's don't feel inhibited to send an email and ask.
Thank you for that. That's something that I was going to build on, because we get a lot of questions about contacting faculty that they want to do research on, right? So we know that for clinical psych, this is something that they have to do beforehand, but for, you know, just PhD programs in general, you don't have to. And even though sometimes in the personal statement, right, there, I've seen them more and more, they mention 3 people you want to work with. But what is your thoughts on that? And the rationale is, for some students, they say, how do I know they have funding? How do I know they can take me? So if I don't get a space in those labs, then why would I apply for it? So what is your insights on how they should approach the faculty that they're interested in working with?
One piece of advice that I could offer is, don't apply to or enter a graduate program if there's only 1 or 2 people you're really interested in.
Correct.
Be open-minded.
Absolutely.
And once you arrive, really explore, take advantage of that. Most of the programs that we represent are rotation-based programs where you get to continue to explore and find your passion in a more specific way, and take advantage of that. I think great PhD training can come in a form that you weren't necessarily expecting. And so, yeah, let yourself explore.
Steve.
Yeah, very much in terms of thinking about rotations, and realize that you don't always come in match, so don't have to worry about it right as you're applying. But you do obviously want to pay attention to the program description. I know that we're covering mostly the biosciences or biomedical sciences, and many of them do come in, you know, doing rotations and stuff. If there are other people outside on this call who are outside of that, like in ecology, you often come in matched with the professor. So it's really important that you have to contact that professor very specifically. So I think, I don't know if Natasha had posted or Gail had posted the guide that we have. And in that particular guide, we've provided a draft template of an email message that you might reach out to a professor. Please don't copy and paste that letter. Obviously customize it to your specific situation, but it is, I think, valuable to help you to reach out to potential faculty, but pay attention to how the program functions and whether you have to come and match or you do that sort of matching. And don't be worried if you don't get a response. Many faculty get overwhelmed with these. And so if you don't get a response, think about other options too.
Thank you for that. And so there have been some students who are like, some websites have a lot of information and some others are a little bit vague. So is it okay for them to contact the program directors to ask for more details?
You should. And if a program director doesn't respond, you should think about that.
Right.
Very good. That's right.
So we really like questions. We like hearing from students. We spend a lot of time answering questions. And that's what makes the graduate school application process different from applying to an undergraduate school, because we're really looking for our future colleagues. So we want to talk to you. We want to see whether you're a good fit. And you also want to talk to us. And so by all means, send us any questions.
Right. Thank you for saying it live, so that they're not afraid of contacting program directors. So we have a question here. If a student has been out for several years, out of school, or are career changes and they don't have, that much research experience, what are some suggestions?
I think you should answer that, Natasha.
I know. That's what I need the question. We need the plug here. So I would say apply to the NIH postbac program, right? You get 1 to 2 years of full research experience. So you figure out this is something that I want to do, right? Working there full time doing research. And you also get to prepare. We have in the OITE have developed a whole series to prepare you for grad school. So you have those resources. And there's also the prep programs, right? So it's postdoc programs at university. They are a little bit different, but those are the opportunities, right? And I think from all of you, I will agree that there's no negative taking those extra years to do postbac, right? Some of them are worried.
In fact, I always tell future students, you're not catching a train. The most important thing you have to remember is that people are ready at different times. When you feel that you've had sufficient experience, when you know that graduate school is right for you, that's the time when you apply.
Awesome.
I think Steve has his hand up.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Steve.
Yeah. So this all goes back to, I think, trying to explain your story to other people, so that if you're non-traditional, but I'm not quite sure what's non-traditional these days, but if you're taking some gap year, some time off, or changing majors and things of that sort. So I think this is really valuable for doing that 7 success stories exercise. The idea is that you want to have some practice writing down your story that has a consistent thread. So just to let you know, so I've meandered professionally, and I'm sure other people have. So you have to sort of figure out what's your consistent thread that shows that, that you are prepared at this time for grad school. If you were just sitting in your parents' basement, doing nothing, then, that's probably not a good way to sort of think about it. But you have to sort of think about, maybe you were sitting in your parents' basement, but you did quite a bit in terms of doing some self-reflection. You found a job to do something that was meaningful. You discovered some things about yourself. That's important. So the important thing is to be able to write on paper on your personal statements and so forth, and also during your interviews. So verbally and in written form. So the idea is to practice doing this. Yeah, Davey, I think had something.
I just wanted to build on that, Steve, because it's great advice. I think when I read student essays, if a student kind of gives me a sense of the stepping stones, whether they explored a variety of different kinds of research or did really different things, how each step in that journey helped build them and also get them closer to the trajectory that they find is most appropriate for them. That narrative is very strong. I think, to have an arc that leaves you at the end of the essay, like, now I'm ready, come on and let me in. That's that's often the most effective.
Lots of noises in the chat, just so you know, about people at the NIH and in prep programs. So there you go.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, a shout out for the prep programs. So they are really a very special NIH supported opportunity for you to do 1 or 2 years of intensive research work and prepare for a PhD application. And there are, I think, about 27 different schools throughout the United States. And you can find the information about the NIH prep programs on the NIH website.
Thank you. Yeah, so there are options. David.
Well, sometimes students ask whether master's degrees are kind of a good stepping stone. And I think it really depends on the master's. Because some master's programs are really designed to help send individuals into the job market right away, and others are designed a little bit more like an intermediate stage. So it's really important to understand. I think a program that gives you the depth of kind of research experience that's equivalent to a prep or post-bac is better. But most PhD programs don't require a master's in this generation. And so it's not necessarily an advantage if it doesn't give you that deeper experience of research.
Correct. And if they're in defense, I think it's important for them, you know, speak with a career counselor or a pre-grad advisor to kind of help them figure out what's best for them, depending on, you know, what they want to do in the future and what they need to do to prepare and be more competitive. So thank you for mentioning that. So changing gears a little bit, some student asked about what are some of the things based on your experience working with so many students that they should be aware of to guarantee that the school has the faculty, the resources, and the opportunities in and outside the school to make sure that they complete their dissertation and they get the most out of their PhD training. No, this is a big question. Steve.
I saw that question also. Thanks, Natasha, for pointing that out. So I think this is part of your sort of the approach in thinking about life. And I think the person used that word guarantee. And I get a little bit nervous about that because I don't think there's any guarantees in life. You could have your dream faculty at a particular institution that's the perfect location, all of that. And then you didn't know that the faculty was actually planning to move to another institution. So you can't control that. So I think part of it is increasing your chances, increasing the probability that you would have a successful time. And so, yeah, I think as many people have talked about, have a significant number of faculty that you think that you could be pretty happy with working with, but you don't know until you've actually met them and got a sense that you actually click all of that. But I think there's a lot of sort of nebulous things, okay, number of faculty, but it also needs to have a good support network. So do you have friends and colleagues and family that's nearby that can help support you? Are you going to be moving across the country or maybe even across the world, or you don't really have any personal connections? That gets really sticky and can be really challenging. So thinking about something else that you might not always think about is a university's endowment. And you don't always think about this as an undergrad. I didn't, but I think the university's endowment gives you a sense of, does the university have the finances and support programs to help you to succeed? So it's not simply just, do they have the instruments and facilities for the lab, but do they have other structural programs? Do they have a good career centers that focus on graduate students? A lot of universities have career centers, but they focus mostly on undergrads. But do they have programs and activities for you as a graduate student to help you succeed? Things of that sort. And I think the endowment gives you some sense of, in terms of university support finances.
I'm going to argue that one of the best measures is really to tap into the grad student on the ground.
Yeah,
they are there. They know what's going on. And what I love and appreciate about grad students is that they are not afraid of sharing the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. They will tell you all the red flags that you should look for, and they will also tell you all the awesome things that are going on. And then it's your job to figure out if you can live with the not so good things, or if the really good things far away the bad things, right? But tap into the underground.
And I just to build on that, I think once you get started, that community of near peers ends up being really critical to making the experience a success. So they're your best source of reliable information about what the experience is like. And then, you know, they are an amazing resource when you get there. I think you want to feel, you know, when you interview and you go and get a chance to meet students from other programs, you really want to rely on your gut instincts about where you're going to be at your best.
Yep.
There'll be a lot of places where you can sort of succeed. And the question is, where will you be your best self? Sometimes it's hard to know, but I think I agree that knowing the students and the spirit and the ethos of the place is really important.
I completely agree with Nicquet, and was thinking the success of the students is something to really, and the happiness of the students is really important. But to add to what everyone says, and going back to what Steve mentioned, is there are no guarantees. So a great question to ask the students is, what happens if? What happens if your mentor leaves? What happens if the funding stops? You know, how has this been handled at the school? And then you can, because there are no guarantees, people hope that doesn't happen, but different schools will respond differently. And if that's something you want to, you know, learn more about, go ahead and ask the students and the faculty.
Thank you for that. So if they want to speak to students before getting an interview, right, in the moment, like they're deciding which schools, what approach would you recommend to reach out to students if they don't know anyone at that school?
I would do a couple of things. I would reach out to the grad program director and ask if that's the case. Or, you know, a wonderful thing to do is LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
LinkedIn is just a plethora of information on LinkedIn. You can find students there. And once you find one, you just ask them to connect you with others. And I'm telling you, there is just nothing like talking to grad students. They will pour their hearts out to you. So use them.
And also take advantage of networking opportunities like the NIH Graduate Fair. Coming up is SACNAS. Another great opportunity, Abercams in November. All of these are great opportunities to meet current students in PhD programs and to hear from them about what it's like.
And a lot of different groups have a group or an organization like a biomedical student organization or something, and you can look on websites and see who's the president or officers there, and you can always reach out to them as well.
Awesome. And going into looking for programs, what advice do you give for navigating, you know, the welcoming and inclusive community piece when you are looking at programs, right? You want to find a program that values you as a person, as a student. It's not only science, and Sharon, you know, mentioned that in her main talk. So what would be your advice? Because sometimes that's kind of can be hard to find out. And I'm going to go to Steve first.
Yeah, Natasha, that's a wonderful question. And it's really tricky, right? So you want to get a sense of the culture and so forth. And obviously you want to do searching online and do that as best as you can. And so I did also post in the chat window another organization called National Research Mentoring Network, NRMN. And so this is a national organization to help you network with other people. And a key component of that is thinking intentionally about diversity. So it's not an artificial add-on, but it's very intentional thinking about that. And so this is a place that you're more likely to connect with grad students of color, with postdocs, faculty, and so forth. And so this is something that can help you sort of indicate for your preferences as you think about potential mentors of your preferences in terms of thinking about your own personal identity. Maybe you identify also as queer. And so you could talk about that and indicate that in terms of your preferences. And that'll help you find people, you know, is this community supportive of transgender students? Is it supportive of Black students? And thinking about that, you can also obviously look at websites, do they have a Black house or a Black community center and things of that sort. You also want to make sure that it's active. It's not a website from 5 years ago. That's like, they had one activity 5 years ago. They're like, nah. So you want to be thoughtful about that. And I think universities really struggle that, they do want to say that diversity is really important, but you want to get a really significant sense, is this authentic? Is this performative?
Right.
All of that. It's really difficult.
Yeah, I would add that websites really communicate intent sometimes more effectively than what's really happening within the student network. And so I know it's a lot of work to interview, but I would say the interview is going to get you deeper into the community and give you exposure and access. And so I encourage you to do a fair amount of interviewing if you can, but you can, I think as maybe Nicquet said before, write to the program directors and they'll put you in touch with student organizations, but I think you'll learn a lot more when you start talking to the students about what life is like.
I'm going to come back to that on the ground. There is nothing like it. If you want to know how students of your identity are being treated at an institution, that is where you go. As a faculty member, I do not have the experience of a student. I can empathize with the experience of a student, but I do not have the experience of a student, which means you can come to talk to me about some things, but most things, you need to talk to people who are where you are, who are experiencing what you are experiencing. I cannot tell you how critical it is to make sure that you are having in-depth conversations with students in the programs with which you're interested.
And I can also add that if you're a senior and you're applying now, then the interview and this advice is good. But if you're a freshman, sophomore, or junior, and you have an idea of a school that you're thinking about, I would encourage you to apply to a summer program there and spend the summer there, and you can work there and get some ideas. And so
Absolutely.
you don't have to wait until the interview when you apply. You can start early and try to do an internship, do a summer program, visit the schools, do some of those things early on.
Great advice. Thank you for that. So in the diversity component, so we know now more schools are asking diversity statement or diversity related prompts. And many students are worried because they say, I don't know how to answer, or what do they want me to answer in that statement? So what would be advice, or what are committees looking for when they ask for these questions that could help them understand how to approach these diversity related statements? Steve?
Yeah, so as someone who's helped craft diversity statements, I'd say pay attention to that. And in terms of the instructions, pay attention to the wording, very specifically what they're asking for, because each university is going to have something of what they sometimes call personal history or personal diversity statement, things of that sort. Look very closely at the instructions. And don't simply just copy and paste your, the one statement to all the other universities. You want to pay attention to what exactly that they're looking for. Something, we think about in terms of diversity, you want to be thoughtful about it. I occasionally see some statements where I'll see a student write basically what it comes across as, you should accept me because I'm a student of color. Well, I think it's really wonderful that a lot of universities want students of color at their universities, but you want to be very thoughtful about why is diversity important to you and why do you think diversity should be important at that institution? So does your identity, some aspect of your identity, has it impacted your path, your journey, your characteristics, your qualities that you think help you to succeed? And why do you think diversity should be important for that institution? Is it something that we believe that is a value, that diversity is essential because it's something that is all of us as members of our world that we should be morally obligated to pursue? Is it something that benefits the organization? So some people talk about this between moral versus instrumental rationales, but be thoughtful about it in terms of why you think diversity should be important.
Anyone else has anything to add? Dave?
When reviewing diversity statements for faculty hires, it's a little different, but some people have invested a lot of their personal time and energy in different kinds of community activities. If you've been part of a student group, if you've tried to really contribute to the community experience, and you've done things to serve your community in a variety of ways, it's really valuable for the programs to know about that, because I think a lot of us are really excited to see emerging leaders who are willing to contribute to making the academic environment really engaging and inclusive.
Fantastic, thank you. And then in another topic, mental health, that's another common topic that we are asked a lot of questions, like the stigma that can come with it, like how much should I write, like if it's something that I should disclose in my personal statement, how should they approach questions about mental health support in the interview, but also maybe personal experiences in their personal statement.
All right, I'll jump in here.
Oh, Nicquet first, okay. Then we'll go to David.
I'm trying not to jump in. So in terms of your personal statement, I would tell the story with enough details to help to contextualize for the reader, but I would not overshare, right? In terms of the interview, I am not hiding if I need mental health care. And if you have to hide that from an institution, you should think about why you want to go there. Is that really the kind of environment that you want to be in, right? So I think there is this balance that you have to make in the written part, where you don't overshare. And I don't want you to overshare in the interview either, but you should find out about the resources and the access that you will have. You're spending 5 years of your life here. You can't check your mental health at the door for 5 years. So you gotta find out. And if people are uncomfortable, can't imagine that people would be, but if they are uncomfortable with you asking,
not the place.
Serenara.
Yeah.
I would agree. So, but be careful here, and I think Dr. Blake said it best. You want to give some information, but you don't have to share any HIPAA protected information. This is not required. Nobody needs your medical history. This is private. And the same thing in the interview. You could say, well, I had a difficult time, but I learned something from this difficult time. And I know how to handle difficult times. And that's impressive, because there is no research experience that isn't filled with difficult times.
Yep.
Yeah, I was going to say that just the process of pursuing a PhD is filled with sometimes surprising stresses.
Yep.
And it can be hard for any of us to stay on a really nice work-life balance and handle stresses that come along, whether it's personal or professional stress. So I think it's really important that you have a sense, and not just talking to the program, but also other students, what the resources are, how accessible they are, how user-friendly they are. But I think you should, even if you've never had a challenge that you couldn't handle, you know, you need to entertain the possibility that one of these days something will come along that'll throw you a little bit off balance, and just be open to asking for help. And I think you'll find that most programs understand this. It's a time in one's life which is, you know, a complicated period. Like I think I grew up a lot in graduate school, and I had some very, you know, challenging, frustrating stretches in the lab, and you rely a lot on friends. I think Steve made the point earlier that you know, you have resources on a lot of dimensions in your life, not just the professional resources. But I think this is something we all have to figure out as we go forward in a PhD.
And thank you for that, because I know this is a very important topic for the students. And as you all say, and Sharon mentioned, like, right, you want to find the program that takes care of you as a student, and a mentor, because it's gonna, right, Nicquet said, it's gonna be your home for the next 5-6 years. So thank you for pointing that out and be honest with your answer. So we have 10 minutes, so I wanted to change gear a little bit and talk about letters of recommendations. So what will be the best letters of recommendations? And I have a more specific question. You know, sometimes or many times students don't work directly with the PI, right? They're under the PI, they work under a staff scientist or a postdoc that knows them more than the PI. So how should they approach that situation? Will the letter of recommendation should be from the PI, even if they don't know them that well, or is that a staff scientist is okay? David?
I think most PIs who work with a staff scientist would be asking that person to tell them about the student. But there's nothing quite like having the head of the laboratory on that letter, whether it's a co-signed letter or a letter where the PI quotes the supervisor or staff scientist who's working directly with the student. I think having both perspectives of the person who's really invested in engaged with the student and the person who's kind of shepherding the whole lab operation are really valuable. So you can ask your mentor or your, you know, the person you're working with, if it's possible that the letter be from both of those people.
Yep. That's what I would do.
I think the key is to get someone that you've done research with, like you said, the head of the lab. And I think it's important that adds somebody that understands research, the field you're going into, the path that you're taking, and has a lot of credibility and weight with the admissions committee compared to, you know, a professor in a different field. So I think that having someone that you've done research with is really important. And the mentor, the person who runs the lab, has probably seen you in lab meetings or give talks or knows more about you than you think. And so I think that co-signing and collaborating on a letter with the person the graduate student you may work with at the bench may be a good thing to do.
I think
Go ahead, David.
Sometimes I see students seeking letters from instructors in a course they did really, really well in. But what's very important for a letter is that the letter reflects a deep, authentic understanding of what's driving you, what helps you, sort of motivates you, and has made you decide that you're going to get a PhD. So whoever you have writing letters for you, it's really important that they know you well and that you take the time to develop a relationship, a dialogue, so that they can write about you with some insight. It's great to have done extremely well, whether in a laboratory or in another experience. I think the best letters come from people who you've worked with in the laboratory.
And it's always important to ask for a strong letter of recommendation. That may be hard to say, but don't make the assumptions, and always ask for a strong letter of recommendation. And you know the schools that you're applying to, and if they're looking for some type of experience or something that you think that you have exhibited in knowing or working with this person, you can say they're really looking for someone who has a lot of experience, and I worked in your lab, and therefore I think you're, so you know, maybe you can mention that. And so I think it's good to give them an idea of what you're exactly what Davey said, where you're applying to, why it's important, and that you've taken the time to get to know them. And the first time they see you isn't when you ask for that letter of recommendation. So it is something that is a responsibility of yours to get to know a lot. This is networking. This is part of your professional career. And so as you start to do this through your undergraduate or your internships or how you're doing this, it's really important to get to know these people, and then that will be natural flow that they write you that strong letter of recommendation that you need or want.
And so one question on that is, what about individuals who have left school and have been working in biotech or the industry? Will a recommendation from someone they're working with there, it's better than someone from the undergrad years ago, or what would you recommend? Steve?
Yeah, I think it all depends on that relationship. So that, hope, even if it's been a number of years, if you feel like you've like updated them and so forth. If you haven't updated them, here's an opportunity. You still have some time because many of the applications are due until the fall. So I say, hey, reach out to them and say, hey, can I chat with you? And so this might be a little bit underhanded, but even if you definitely, decide for yourself if you're going to apply to these schools, just say, hey, I want to seek for your advice. This helps faculty get a sense that, that they're going to add to that conversation and give you some advice. And it will be most likely, almost likely it will be valuable for you. But you're trying to reach out to the faculty member and say, hey, I want to catch you up with where I've been. I'd love to chat with you, and I hope that you can provide me some advice as I think about grad school. I also want to see if you might be willing to write a letter of recommendation and just have a conversation. So it doesn't have to be long. It could be 20, 30 minutes long, but just help to catch up with them. I also agree with Patricia that, it should be a strong letter. And towards the end of that, this is going to be really awkward, but you're going to have to ask, do you think, given our conversation, you'd be able to write me a strong letter of recommendation? It might sting if they say no, but it's better to have that no then, as opposed to later on when that you discover, oh, I didn't get into school because this professor wrote or really bland letter and that basically didn't recommend you. So hopefully do that now to rebuild or reestablish that relationship if you haven't touched base with them recently, or to do that now as if you've obviously stayed in touch with them. Obviously, that's great.
Can I add just one small thing to that? If you have a conversation with somebody for 30 minutes and then you ask, can you write me a strong letter? And they blink, just run. Don't use it. I'm just telling you, if they can't say absolutely, I will endorse your application right out the gate, I'm not sure that you want to take that chance.
So I just wanted to return to the letter of recommendation from a biotech experience or an experience in a pharmaceutical company. We do see those letters of recommendation all the time. And sometimes they are not written in the form that we expect. And so a good way to work with your supervisor, if you want a letter of recommendation from graduate school, is to provide information to them. So you can give them an updated CV. This is, what I had been doing before, and this is my research experience in the biotech, and now this is why I want to go to graduate school. So you're actually providing the framework for their letter of recommendation. And we understand that sometimes you cannot talk about some of the proprietary information, but you should be able to talk about, let's say you were working on an arthritis drug. You should be able to talk about what is arthritis? Why is it important to understand the mechanism of inflammation? What kinds of cells might be involved? What kinds of antibodies might be involved? What might be the targets for future drugs? So if you show that you understand this, you will have accomplished your goal.
Thank you, Victoria. We have 1 minute left, and I just wanted to show one thing. GREs, if they say they're optional, are they really optional? That's a concern students
Somebody's
have.
expecting, let me just make that clear. If somebody wants your GREs at this point in the game, just go apply somewhere else, man.
Yeah.
There are many
It's-
schools going
it's-
away, so that's what they always like, have that question about if it's optional or not.
Optional is such a terrible
It
It
is.
is
statement.
terrible.
We do
Okay.
not consider them at all. And I think there are programs that need to assess mathematical skills. And I know some of those programs still require GREs, but in general, I think everybody understands that they have very limited predictability, in terms of
Of
outcome
success.
of
Okay.
success. So
Well, thank you. We are running out of time. It's 4:20. Wow, we got a lot of questions. Please go to the exhibitor sessions and then you can ask more of your questions. They're all going to be here during these next days. So check out for their schools. And thank you all for joining us and have a great rest of the week. Bye. And thank you all for joining again.